Sit down with me for a moment, my dear. There's a story you need to hear. This is the story of Carol Hayes, a woman who gave 15 years of her life to a company and watched her 42-year-old boss replace her with his 24-year-old niece. She didn't protest. 3 weeks later, the board of directors requested a private meeting. My name is Carol Hayes. On the day my boss tried to erase me, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room, hands folded in my lap, staring at a manila folder with my name on it. Across from me sat Martin Lowe, CEO of Nexus Point Logistics. 42, expensive haircut, watch that cost more than my first car. Beside him sat Denise from HR, eyes glued to a printed script. Carol, Martin began, voice soft with fake sympathy. You know how much we value you here. That sentence, my dear, is corporate code for get ready. I looked at the folder. Then why does that look like a severance packet? He blinked, thrown off for half a second, then smiled again. We're restructuring your position, he said. The board wants us to move in a younger, more agile direction. We need leadership that reflects where the industry is going. There it was. Younger. I'm 58, not fossilized. I said. My voice came out calm. Too calm. Denise shifted in her seat. We, really appreciate your years of service. She read from the paper. To support you through this transition, the company is offering a generous package. Martin cut in. And, of course, we're not leaving your team rudderless. We've already found your replacement. He said it like he was announcing a prize. The board has approved my niece, Haley, for Director of Operations. He added, fresh eyes, full of energy. You'll overlap for a couple of weeks, so you can bring her up to speed. I stared at him. So you're replacing me with family, I said, and calling it strategy. His jaw tightened for a heartbeat. We're leveraging talent that understands our culture. Does the board know she's your niece? I asked. Of course, he said quickly. They trust my judgment. Denise slid the manila folder toward me. Inside is your severance agreement, she said. 2 weeks' pay for every year of service, continued health coverage for 3 months, and a standard non-disparagement and non-solicitation clause. I didn't touch it. What happens if I don't sign? I asked. Martin's smile cooled. We're hoping you'll make this professional, Carol. We'd hate to see your retirement overshadowed by conflict. Retirement. I hadn't used that word about myself yet. Apparently he had. I looked at his smooth face, his expensive suit. I thought about the nights I'd spent in this building at 1 a.m. when he was still out at networking dinners. 15 years of knowing where every truck, pallet, and invoice in this company lived. My chest burned, but on the outside, I just nodded. I understand, I said. Relief flashed in both their eyes. They thought I was giving up. They didn't realize I had already seen this coming. 3 weeks earlier, a little red 1 had popped up in my inbox. Subject, phase-out plan, ops. It was meant for Martin's inner circle. Someone had typed Carol.h instead of Caroline.hr. 1 extra letter, 1 open secret. Inside were bullet points. Move Carol out of ops by Q2. Position as retirement/quality of life decision. Transition Haley into ops leadership before patent and vendor consolidation. Avoid giving Carol access to new contracts. Keep tone compassionate. She's nearly retirement age. Will accept soft landing if framed kindly. I'd read it twice, hands cold on the keyboard. Nearly retirement age. Avoid giving her access. That day, I printed the email, slid it into a slim blue binder I kept locked in my bottom drawer, and scribbled phase out across the tab. After that, I started collecting things. Performance reviews calling me indispensable. emails thanking me for saving a multi-million-dollar client, notes from meetings where Martin had repeated my ideas word for word and gotten applause. All of it went into the binder. By the time he sat me down with that manila folder, my little blue binder was already half full. Come closer a moment, my dear. I want you to notice something important. When that email hit Carol's inbox, she could have forwarded it to half the company. She could have screamed, stormed, thrown a mug at the glass wall. Instead, she printed it. She put it in a binder. She understood something a lot of people miss. Anger passes. Paper stays. From here on, that blue binder will be the backbone of this story. Back in the conference room, I finally picked up the manila folder and flipped it open. 10 pages of legalese. One sentence jumped out. Employee agrees not to initiate contact with any member of the board of directors regarding employment compensation or company practices. I underlined it with my thumbnail. Interesting clause, I said. Don't want the board hearing anything that might upset them? Denise stiffened. That's standard. I'm sure it is, I said. I'll have my attorney look at it. I didn't actually have an attorney yet, but Martin didn't know that. His smile faltered. Of course, he said. Just remember the offer is time sensitive. We'd hate for it to lapse. When does it expire? I asked. 2 weeks, Denise said. That should be enough time. I replied. I stood up, tucked the folder under my arm, and smoothed my blazer. Is there anything else? I asked. Martin blinked again, like he'd expected begging. Tears. Rage. Instead, he had a woman who looked like she was reviewing a grocery list. No, he said, finally, we appreciate your professionalism. As I walked back through the open office, heads ducked. My team avoided my eyes. They already knew. The glass walls let you see everything in this place. Everything except what was happening behind the executive doors. Haley arrived the next morning. I was at my desk cleaning out a drawer when I heard Martin's bright voice in the main hallway. Everyone, this is Haley. She'll be stepping in as director of operations. I looked up. She stood there in a cream blazer and high-waisted trousers, hair in a glossy ponytail, clutching a leather notebook. She looked like a LinkedIn ad. For a second, my throat tightened with pure, unfair resentment. I'd been 24 once. I'd walked into my first job with a discount blazer and a head full of spreadsheets. Martin waved her toward my office. Haley, this is Carol, he said. She's been holding down the fort for years. She'll show you the ropes. Haley held out her hand. It's really nice to meet you, she said. Up close, I saw it. The nerves in her eyes, the way she glanced at Martin before saying anything. This is such an amazing opportunity, she added. Uncle Martin says you're the reason this place runs at all. Does he? I said. He cleared his throat. I'll let you two dig in. Haley, soak up everything you can from Carol. She's a legend. Then he vanished, leaving us standing there in the doorway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Can I sit? She asked. Sure, I said. Let's start with the fun stuff. How much experience do you have with operations? Her cheeks flushed. I, did a 6-month project coordinator role at an e-commerce startup, she said. And I've been helping my uncle with some strategy decks. Mostly I've worked in marketing. Have you ever run a warehouse? I asked. She shook her head. Managed a fleet schedule, balanced a logistics budget, negotiated with freight carriers. Her flush deepened. Not yet, she said, but I'm a fast learner. I leaned back. In that moment, I realized something ugly and simple. She wasn't the villain here. She was a prop, a convenient piece of family he could plug into my role while he did whatever he didn't want me to see. Okay, I said, fast learners are my favorite. Get a notebook. We're starting with the ugly truth. Over the next week, I walked Haley through everything. The inventory system, the routing software, the vendor list I built like a nervous system over 15 years. She took frantic notes, nodding like a bobblehead. By the third day, she looked less like an ad and more like a woman staring at a puzzle with too many pieces. I didn't realize how much you manage, she said as we walked the warehouse floor. Operations is like the nervous system, I said. When it works, no one notices. When it doesn't, everything shakes. We passed a pallet with the wrong label. I pointed it out, explained how one wrong code could cost us a client. She scribbled. I don't know why he thought I could just slot in, she muttered. Because you're smart, I said, and because you're family. She looked at me, eyes searching my face for anger. I didn't know he was pushing you out, she said quietly. He told us you were ready to retire, that you wanted more time with your grandkids. I don't have grandkids, I said. Her mouth fell open. Oh. We reached the mezzanine overlooking the loading dock. Trucks backed in, drivers shouting, forklifts whirring. This was my orchestra, my chaos. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. Are you mad at me? I thought about lying. I'm mad at him, I said instead. I'm mad at a system that thinks 60 is expired, but I don't blame you for wanting a career. Relief softened her shoulders. Then, like she'd been holding it back, she added, he also said the board wanted someone he could trust in ops, that there were things you didn't need to be involved in. I stilled. What kind of things? I asked. She hesitated. Vendor changes. Contract consolidation. He just said it was above your pay grade now. Above my pay grade. The same contracts I'd been told not to access in that email. My dear, that's when the smell of rot finally hit Carol's nose. Do you feel that little twist in your stomach, my dear? That's your intuition recognizing a pattern. When people don't want the person who actually knows how the machine works to see new parts being installed, it's rarely because the parts are shiny and safe. It's because they're crooked, and Carol is about to follow that smell. 2 days before my official last day, I stayed late. I told Haley to go home at 6. You'll burn out before you even start, I said. Go have a life. I'll finish the month-end reports. She hugged her laptop and left. The building slowly emptied. The warehouse lights clicked off one by one. Only the hum of the server room remained. I logged into the purchasing system. I'd been unassigned from vendor approvals last month, flagged as transitioning. But my read-only access still worked. A new name kept popping up on the paid invoices list. Tricon Solid Solutions, LLC. I'd never heard of them. Yet in the last quarter, we paid them more than $1.2 million for consulting. Nexus Point had never spent that kind of money on consulting. We were a haul freight, move boxes, get paid kind of company. I clicked through. The approval chain looked normal, except for one detail. Half the requests showed my user ID approving them. Except I hadn't. The timestamps were 2 a.m., 3 a.m., times I was asleep in my small townhouse, dreaming about spreadsheets chasing me down hallways. Either I'd become a sleep clicker, or someone was using my credentials. I pulled the access logs. The IP addresses on those approvals didn't match my machine. They came from the executive floor, from Martin's corner office. My pulse thudded in my ears. I exported everything, invoice images, approval logs, vendor details, to a flash drive and slid it into my pocket. Then I picked up my little blue binder, walked to the copier, and added another tab. Tricon. The next morning, Martin popped into my office with his salesman smile. Big day, he said. Last one. How are you feeling? Grateful, I said. He relaxed. Good. Listen, I have a small favor to ask. Just a bit of housekeeping before you go. He set a stack of paper invoices on my desk. They were all Tricon. I need your signature on these, he said lightly. The auditors prefer wet signatures on legacy approvals. You know how they are. I flipped through. Same amounts, same dates, same vendor. Why weren't these signed when they went through the system? I asked. He shrugged. Glitch. The system missed them. No big deal. Just catching up. He leaned in. Carol, you don't want this hanging over your last week. He added. Sign, and I'll take you out to lunch. My treat. A real send-off. A year ago, I might have done it. Tired. Trusting. Wanting to keep the peace. But once you see your own name used as a ghost stamp at 2 a.m., it's hard to unsee it. I'll need to reconcile these with the digital approvals first, I said. Make sure we're not duplicating anything. His smile thinned. We don't have time for that. Finance closes books today. Then you shouldn't have waited until my last day, I said, equally sweet. For a flicker, something ugly flashed in his eyes. Don't make this difficult, he said softly. You've had a good run here. Let's not sour it. I smiled back. I wouldn't dream of it, I said. That's why I'd like everything to be correct. You know how I am. I slid the stack back toward him. I'll sign once I've done my checks, I said. If they match the system, no problem. If not, we'll deal with it properly. He stared at me. He repeated. You're the CEO, I said. Nothing happens in this company without you approving it, right? For the first time, he didn't answer. He just scooped up the invoices and left without his usual parting joke. When the door closed, my hands started to shake, but not from fear, from something that felt suspiciously like adrenaline. Let's pause, my dear. You know what I love about that moment? He walked in expecting the woman he'd written in that email, nearly retirement age, will accept soft landing if framed kindly. Instead, he met a woman who had read the contract, checked the logs, and wasn't afraid to let silence sit between them. Never underestimate the power of a quiet no backed by receipts. Haley showed up at my townhouse that evening with a grocery store pie and eyes swollen from crying. Hi, she sniffed when I opened the door. I didn't know what else to do. Come in, I said. We sat at my tiny kitchen table. She kept her coat on like she might need to run. He's mad at me, she blurted. I asked him about some of the Tricon invoices, and he told me never to go around him to finance again. How did you even find them? I asked. My inbox, she said. There's CCA and GME on new approvals. One came in for $500,000 for strategic alignment services. She wiped her eyes. I don't even know what that means, she said, and he wants me to click approve without asking questions. Did you? I asked. She shook her head. Not yet. I said I needed context. He told me to stop being dramatic, that you'd always just done what needed to be done. I snorted. That's one way to describe working 17-hour days. She studied my face. He told me you were emotional, she said, that you cried in meetings, that you couldn't handle stress anymore. I cried once, I said, when my sister died, and I came back from the funeral to a warehouse fire. I went into the bathroom and lost it for 3 minutes. Apparently, that became my entire personality. Haley looked down at her hands. I think he's using me, she whispered. Just like he used you. I don't want to be part of something illegal. She looked up, eyes wide. Is it illegal? She asked. I don't know yet, I said, but I know it smells wrong. And when something smells wrong, you don't spray perfume on it. You open a window. She let out a broken laugh. What do? She asked. We document, I said, and we find out who that window belongs to. There was one person I knew who might listen. Her name was Louise Carter, 72, white hair sharp as her mind, former board member at Nexus Point, and my unofficial mentor since year 3. She'd retired to a small house by the river where she grew tomatoes and read annual reports for fun. I called her that night. "Louise," I said, "I think Martin is doing something the board ought to know about." "That boy was always more charm than substance," she said. "Come by tomorrow. Bring coffee and whatever you've got." The next afternoon, Haley and I sat at her wooden kitchen table while she flipped through the contents of my blue binder. The phase-out email, performance reviews, the Tricon invoices, and access logs. Haley's emails showing pressure to approve large payments without documentation. Louise read in silence, her mouth tightening. "This is not garden variety executive ego," she said at last. "This is potential fraud, wrapped in nepotism, sprinkled with age discrimination." She looked at Haley. "Did he disclose to the board that you'd be taking an officer-level role?" she asked. Haley fidgeted. "He said they were on board. He never mentioned the nepotism policy." Louise snorted. "Of course he didn't. He tried to get his brother into a senior supplier role 5 years ago, and we shut that down hard. That policy is in writing for a reason." She stood, walked to a small safe in the corner, and pulled out a folder. "Here," she said, handing me a copy of the company's ethics and whistleblower policy. "In case you've never seen the real version," she added, "not the sugar-coated summary." I skimmed. One line jumped out. "Any employee or former employee may report concerns directly to the board's audit committee or corporate secretary without fear of retaliation." "Seems your severance agreement doesn't override board policy," she said. "If they tried to muzzle you from talking to us, that's another problem." My heart thudded. "Louise," I said quietly, "if I come forward, can he fire Haley? Retaliate?" "He can try," she said. "But once the audit committee is involved, he'll be under a microscope. Retaliation would be the dumbest move of his career." She patted my hand. "You didn't spend 15 years keeping this place upright just to be the fall guy for some vanity vendor scheme," she said. "If you're willing, I'll help you get a meeting with the right people." Haley swallowed. "I'll come too," she said. "I don't want to be his shield." Louise smiled, small and fierce. "Good," she said. "Let's see how he handles a woman with a binder and his niece telling the same story. You see this little counsel, my dear? An older woman who remembers the rules. A middle-aged woman with the receipts. A younger one who just realized she's standing in front of a train. That is how power shifts, not with one hero, but with women in 3 different seasons of life deciding they are done being props in someone else's story." Louise advised me to start small but official. "Don't send the whole binder," she said. "Send a calm, factual note. The less dramatic you sound, the more dramatic your evidence will seem when they see it." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and wrote, "Subject, Governance and Ethics Concern, Request for Confidential Meeting. Dear Ms. Patel, my name is Carol Hayes. Until this week, I served as Director of Operations at Nexus Point Logistics. I am writing to request a confidential meeting with the board's audit committee regarding potential issues in 3 areas. 1, vendor selection and payment approvals. 2, non-disclosure of nepotism in the appointment of a senior operations role. And 3, possible retaliation connected to my recent retirement from the company. I have documentation that I believe may be relevant to your oversight responsibilities. Please let me know if there is an appropriate time and channel to share this information. Respectfully, Carol Hayes, former Director of Operations, Nexus Point Logistics." I read it 3 times. No adjectives. No accusations. Just nouns and verbs. Then I hit send. For the first time since that misdirected email, I felt like I'd done something that wasn't just reacting. I was acting. The reply came faster than I expected. From Anika Patel, Corporate Secretary. Subject, Governance and Ethics Concern. Dear Ms. Hayes, thank you for reaching out. The board takes such concerns very seriously. The audit committee has asked that I arrange a confidential meeting with you at your earliest convenience. Former Director Carter has agreed to attend as an advisor. Please confirm your availability for this Friday at 10 a.m. Sincerely, Anika Patel, Corporate Secretary. Friday, 2 days away. I forwarded the email to Louise and Haley. Haley wrote back, I'm scared, but also weirdly relieved. Louise texted, wear the navy suit. Bring the binder. I'll handle the rest. That night, I ironed the suit I'd bought 15 years ago for my first promotion. It still fit. A little snugger, yes, but it fit. The boardroom was on the top floor, past the frosted glass doors I'd walked by 100 times without entering. A receptionist offered me coffee. My hand only trembled a little as I poured. Louise met me at the door, wearing a dark green dress and a look that said, do not try me. Inside, 3 audit committee members sat at the long table. Anika Patel, the corporate secretary, a man from the finance world whose name I always forgot, and Eleanor Shaw, the board chair, tall, silver-haired, eyes like ice in a crystal glass. An outside attorney sat at the far end, legal pad ready. Ms. Hayes, thank you for coming. Eleanor said, this meeting is confidential, and you are protected by our whistleblower policy. Please sit. Tell us what you've seen. My mouth went dry, but my binder was solid under my hand. I opened it to the first tab. 3 weeks ago, I received an email not meant for me. I began. It outlined a plan to remove me from my role and replace me with Mr. Lowe's niece before certain contracts were finalized. I didn't respond. I started documenting instead. For the next hour, I walked them through everything. The phase-out email, the performance reviews, the sudden removal of my approval access, the Tricon vendor, the 2 a.m. approvals, the IP logs pointing to Martin's office, the stack of paper invoices he'd asked me to sign on my last day. Haley joined halfway through, visibly shaking, and described how Martin had pushed her to approve large Tricon payments without support. The outside attorney asked precise, pointed questions. Every time I answered, I slid a document across the table. By the end, the binder was half empty, the table covered in a paper trail that spelled one thing. Martin had been using my credentials, and now Haley's title, to funnel money to a vendor no one could explain. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Has Mr. Lowe been informed of this meeting? She asked Anika. No, Anika said. Per policy, we scheduled it directly. Eleanor turned back to me. Ms. Hayes, she said, thank you for your professionalism in bringing this forward. Do you have any remaining access to company systems? Read only, I said, for now. Please do not log in again unless instructed by counsel, she said, for your protection. She looked at Haley. And Ms. Lowe, she added, you are not to approve any further payments or contractual changes without written guidance from this committee. Haley nodded, eyes wide with relief and fear. We will proceed from here, Eleanor said. If we require further information, we'll contact you through Ms. Carter. As we left, Louise squeezed my hand. You did well, she murmured. Now we see what happens when the grown-ups wake up. You can almost hear it, can't you, my dear? The shift in the air when a room full of people who actually have power realizes they've been kept in the dark. Whenever someone says the board doesn't care, I always think, have you actually shown them the truth? Carol just did, and Martin's little empire is about to feel a draft. For 2 days, nothing happened. On the surface, at least. I turned in my badge and cleared the last of my things from my office. Haley was working from home for health reasons. Translation: the audit committee didn't want her near the approval system. Martin strutted around like usual, popping into teams' Zoom meetings with pep talks about Q3 growth. But little cracks started to show. The CFO looked gray and distracted. The head of procurement seemed to be permanently on the phone. A rumor floated down from IT that someone had requested a full log of all executive-level system access for the past 12 months. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go, then remembered the last time I'd ignored an unknown number. It had belonged to my future. Hello. I answered. Ms. Hayes, this is James Harlow from the internal audit team. The audit committee has requested some follow-up information. Would you be available to come in tomorrow? Of course, I said. He hesitated. And just to let you know, he added, Mr. Lowe has been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. My knees went weak. I see, I said. We appreciate your cooperation. He said, we'll see you at 10. I hung up and sat down slowly on the couch. Daisy, my old terrier, jumped up beside me, sensing something big. Looks like the wheel's finally turning, I murmured into her fur. Before the audit meeting, Martin called my cell 4 times. I didn't pick up. He switched to text. Martin, I heard you've been talking to the board. Not sure what story you're spinning, but this is a bad idea. Martin, we can still fix this quietly. You don't want to damage your own reputation. Martin, I have documentation too. Carol, don't forget that. I forwarded everything to Denise, my lawyer. Yes, by now I had won Louise's insistence. Denise wrote back, do not respond. Let him dig his own hole. Haley texted separately. He's furious. Told my mom, I've betrayed the family. I'm staying at a friend's for a bit. The word family sat sour in my stomach. Family was what men like Martin invoked when they wanted loyalty without accountability. I turned off my phone and went to bed early. Tomorrow, I thought, he can roar at people who aren't scared of him. The next morning, as I walked into headquarters for the audit follow-up, employees were streaming into the auditorium. Town hall, someone whispered. Emergency. Board called. James from audit spotted me. They're doing an all-hands-before-your session, he said. Might as well sit in the back. I slipped into a rear seat. On stage, the board chair, Eleanor, stepped up to the microphone. Good morning, she began. I know you've all heard rumors over the past few days. Today, the board wants to speak to you directly. She didn't mince words. There have been serious concerns raised regarding vendor relationships, approval processes, and compliance with company policies at the executive level. She said, we are investigating thoroughly. Murmurs rippled through the room. Effective immediately, she continued, Mr. Lowe has been placed on leave. The CFO has also stepped aside during this review. Day-to-day operations will be overseen by an interim leadership team, reporting directly to the board. She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. Half the people in that room knew exactly which director of operations had suddenly vanished and then reappeared in a blazer by the back door. As the town hall ended, I slipped out before anyone could corner me. I had a date with a conference room full of auditors. Do you feel that? That low, buzzing hum in the room? That is the sound of a story shifting. For years, Martin was the narrator, visionary CEO, family man, company savior. Now, the mic has moved, and the new narrators are not interested in his highlight reel. They're interested in the ledger. In the follow-up meeting, Audit showed me something that made my skin crawl. They'd pulled audio from the voicemail system and a cloud backup tied to Martin's account. There, in neat digital folders, were recordings of meetings, calls, even private conversations in his office, including one from a month earlier. He was talking to an outside consultant, voice light, confident. "Tricon is clean," he said on the recording. "Run by a buddy. The board will never question it if approvals come from ops. Carol signs everything." I heard my own voice in the background, faint through the office wall, talking to a vendor on another call. He was recording that too. "If she balks, I'll move things under Haley's name." He added, "She owes me. Family does what you ask." "Isn't nepotism a risk?" the other man asked. Martin laughed. "Not if no one calls it that," he said. "The board trusts me. They're old. They don't understand the hustle." I felt something deep and cold settle in my chest. Not hurt, not shock, just confirmation. This wasn't carelessness. It was calculation. Audit had already traced money from Tricon back to a holding company partially owned by Martin. He wasn't just overspending. He was likely self-dealing. They thanked me for confirming timelines and left with my binder to copy. As I walked out of the building, the receptionist gave me a small nod. "Good luck, Miss Hayes," she said. For the first time, I let myself think he might actually fall. It happened faster than I expected. 2 weeks later, Nexus Point issued a press release. The board of directors has accepted the resignation of CEO Martin Lowe, effective immediately following an internal investigation into violations of company policy. The board thanks Mr. Lowe for his past service and will be appointing an interim CEO as it begins a search for new leadership. Internally, people whispered the truth. Self-dealing, vendor fraud, nepotism. The CFO quietly retired. The head of procurement was reassigned pending further review. Haley was offered a choice: remain in a junior role under new management or take a severance and restart elsewhere. "I'm leaving," she told me over coffee. "I don't want my whole career to be a footnote in his scandal." "I think that's wise," I said. She looked at me, eyes bright. "I'm sorry," she said, "for being so excited when I walked into your office that first day. I should have." "You were 24, I said. It wasn't your job to read between his lines. It was his job not to put you in that position." She smiled shaky. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting him use me as a shield." A week after the press release, I got an email from Anika, the corporate secretary. "The board would like to meet with you regarding the future of Nexus Point's operations. Are you available Monday at 3 p.m.? Louise insisted on driving with me. "You've already walked into that boardroom once with a binder," she said. "This time, walk in with your shoulders back. They're the ones who need something." Eleanor greeted me warmly. "Miss Hayes," she said, "please sit." I did, heart thudding. "We owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "You should never have been pushed out the way you were. Age and loyalty are assets, not liabilities." I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I said. She glanced at the other directors. "We also owe you a question," she continued. "The company needs stability. Someone who understands how this place actually runs. Someone the staff trusts." She folded her hands. "We'd like to offer you the role of interim chief operating officer, reporting directly to the board," she said. 6 to 12 months, with the option to transition into an ongoing advisory position if you prefer less day-to-day responsibility after the turnaround. My mind blanked. "You want me to come back?" I said. "Yes," she replied, "but on very different terms, with clear authority, protections, and compensation reflecting your value." I thought of my little townhouse, my quiet mornings, I thought of the warehouse hum, the satisfaction of solving problems bigger than my kitchen. I won't be anyone's shield, I said quietly. Not yours. Not the next CEO's. You'll be our partner, she said, and our conscience, if you're willing. I looked at Louise. She gave me the smallest nod. I'll do it, I said, on one condition. Eleanor raised a brow, which is, we fix the culture that let this happen, I said, starting with how we treat older employees and whistleblowers. No more soft landings that are really punishments. She smiled. Miss Hayes, she said, that's exactly why we need you. Do you see the shape of this justice, my dear? They didn't just toss him out. They turned and said to the woman he underestimated, we'd like you to help us rebuild. Some people think revenge is seeing your enemy fall. Carol's goes a step further. She gets to help write the new rules. My first day as interim COO, I stood at the entrance to the warehouse and took a long breath. The crew watched me, curious, hopeful, wary. I pulled on a safety vest. I know the last few months have been confusing, I said. You've had gossip, press releases, and not a lot of straight talk. So let's start there. I told them, in simple terms, what had happened. Not the legal details, just the truth. Decisions were made that put this company at risk. People who raised concerns were pushed aside. That stops now. I promised transparency on policies, regular town halls where questions could be asked without career suicide, an anonymous reporting channel that actually routed to the audit committee, not to someone's buddy. And one more thing, I said, looking around the room. If anyone here has ever felt shoved toward the door because of your age, I want to hear about it. We're not losing experience because someone's afraid of gray hair. A forklift operator in his 60s let out a loud, "Amen." The room laughed, tension cracking. I went back to my tiny office. Temporary, I kept reminding myself, and opened a fresh binder. Culture Fix, version 1.0. If they were going to pay me to stay, I'd make it worth the headache. Over the next months, we rewrote policies. We added a clear, enforceable anti-nepotism clause for leadership roles. We required board notification and approval for any executive-level family hires. We instituted rotation on vendor selection committees, so no one person controlled the whole pipeline. We built a whistleblower hotline that went straight to an external firm with a mandate to report directly to the audit committee. Internally, people started calling these changes Carol's rules. At first, it was a joke. Then it became a shorthand for the new way we do things. I didn't mind. If my name was going to be attached to something at Nexus Point, I preferred it be to guardrails instead of secret 2 a.m. approvals. At home, life settled into a new rhythm. I still had my townhouse, my old terrier, my book club, but I also had something I hadn't expected, a sense that my work actually belonged to me. Not in a legal IP way, in a meaning way. I'd love to tell you Martin vanished entirely, my dear. Life rarely ties such neat bows. He didn't go to jail. Not yet. Anyway, the bank pursued repayment. The board pursued civil remedies. There were whispers of regulatory investigations. He floated the idea around town that he'd been railroaded by disgruntled old employees and woke boards. Some people believed him. Some didn't. One afternoon, months later, I saw him at the grocery store. He was in sweatpants, hair longer, pushing a cart full of frozen dinners. Our eyes met between rows of cereal. For a second, we were just two people who'd once shared too many meetings and not enough ethics. He opened his mouth. "Carol, I'm not here for a scene," I said calmly. "Whatever you're about to say, save it for your attorney." His jaw clenched. "You think you won?" he said. "No," I said. I think the company survived. That's enough for me. I walked away. For the rest of the day, his face kept trying to rise up in my mind. I let it. Then I pictured my new team, my new policies, my new binders, and his shadow shrank. The women who came to my office most often in those months weren't the old guard. They were the young ones. Fresh analysts, junior supervisors, people like Haley had been, smart, eager, unsure how to push back. Can I ask you something? One of them, a 26-year-old named Priya, said one afternoon. Always, I said. If your boss pressures you to approve something you've never seen before, she asked, what do you do without getting labeled difficult? First, I said, you stop worrying about difficult. That word is often just code for won't let me cut corners. She smiled nervously. Second, I added, you ask for documentation. You ask, can you show me where that's explained in policy? If they can't, that's not your problem. That's theirs. She nodded slowly. Third, I said, you write it down. Date, time, what was said. You keep your own binder, even if it's just a folder on your desktop. You really did that? She asked. I looked at the blue binder still on my shelf, now mostly empty, its contents locked in the board's archives. Yes, I said. It saved my job. It might have saved the company. She looked at me with something I hadn't expected from anyone for a long time. Not pity, not fear, respect. Auntie Joe, you see, my dear? This is the quiet sequel no one posts as a thumbnail. The young woman who walks out of Carol's office that day will one day be in a room where someone tries the same stunt Martin did. And she'll remember, not the press release, the binder, the little sentence. Can you show me where that's written? That's how stories like this stop repeating. A year after the investigation, Nexus Point sponsored a panel at a national logistics conference. Ethics in Operations, Lessons from a Governance Failure. They asked me to speak. The old Carol would have said no. The new one still wanted to say no, but Denise and Louise ganged up on me. You don't have to name names, Denise said. Just tell the truth. So I stood on a stage in front of 200 strangers and told them, in broad strokes, what had happened. I talked about the danger of concentrating power in one charismatic executive, about how easy it is to dismiss older employees as stuck in their ways when those ways are actually guardrails, about the role of nepotism in eroding trust, and about the day a misdirected email landed not in HR's inbox, but in mine. I didn't go public. I said, I didn't leak to the press. I didn't shout in the lobby. I printed it, and I started documenting. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it means your case is still loading. They laughed at that. Afterward, a man in his 50s waited in the aisle until the crowd thinned. I'm a COO too, he said. My CEO just promoted his son over 2 more qualified women. He shook his head. You just gave me language I didn't have, he said. Thank you. I walked back to my hotel room that night, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Proud of my work without needing anyone's permission. 16 months into my interim COO role, the board hired a new permanent CEO, a woman this time, mid-40s, with a track record of fixing messy companies without burning them down. We got along. She respected my boundaries. I respected her title. When my contract came up for renewal, I sat with the board and said, I'd like to step back to an advisory role, 2 days a week. Enough to be useful, not enough to forget I have a life. They agreed. Now, my weeks have room for more than trucks and policies. I volunteer at the local community college, guest lecturing on operations and ethics. I bake on Sundays. I take Daisy to the park, and imagine she understands corporate governance now. Sometimes I drive past the Nexus Point building at dusk, and watch the lights on the warehouse floor. It doesn't feel like my entire world anymore, just a place I helped steer away from a cliff. So, my dear, here we are. I'm at my kitchen table, the same one where I first opened that misdirected email. The blue binder sits on a shelf now, mostly empty, a little scuffed around the edges. My boss replaced me with his niece. I didn't protest, not in the way he expected. I smiled. I took the folder. I went home and opened a different folder. I thought the story would be about my humiliation, my ending. Turns out it was about 3 things. What happens when you actually use the policies companies love to frame on the wall? How quickly a visionary can fall when the people he underestimated compare notes? And how powerful it is when women stop seeing each other as competition and start seeing each other as witnesses. Haley is doing well. She moved to another company in a role she actually earned, where no one expects her to be a shield. Sometimes she texts me pictures of her new office and says, "No uncles allowed." Louise still grows tomatoes and reads annual reports for fun. She says I'm the only reason she doesn't regret all those years in board meetings. As for me, I no longer flinch when someone says the word retirement, because I know now that stepping back from one story doesn't mean you stop mattering. It just means you have more say in what gets written next. My dear, thank you for staying with me all the way through. My name is Annie Jo, and around here we don't rush these stories. We let them unfold the way life does, with quiet emails, messy meetings, bad bosses, good binders, and women who decide they're done apologizing for noticing the truth. Before you go, let me leave you with 3 little questions. If your boss tried to quietly push you out, would you react, or would you start documenting? Do you think nepotism can ever be fair in leadership, or is it always a crack in the foundation? Have you ever been Haley or Carol or even Louise watching from the side? Tell me in the comments, my dear. I read every word. And if you want more stories where justice isn't loud, but it is thorough, go ahead and subscribe. Your next story is already waiting.